Hello and welcome to Transform Yourself TV. I'm Adam Farr, and this is the show that shines the light on the secrets behind physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual transformation. I'm here to teach you how you could transform your body, your mind, and your life once and for all. Stay tuned, I have a great show for you today. The subject of today's episode is how to fall asleep faster in 4 steps using key supplements. This episode is for you if you have one or all of the following problems. Problem number 1, you can't fall asleep at night once you're in bed. Problem number 2, you don't feel tired enough to go to bed by 10 p.m. Problem number 3, you spend about 8 hours in bed but still wake up tired. I've narrowed this issue down to 4 areas of potential intervention. They are the measurement and management of the environment, habits and rituals, biomechanical problems, and biochemical problems. For the purpose of brevity, I'm not going to go into great detail on each of these points. I am going to go into much greater detail on the biochemical interventions you could use in order to get better sleep. The other ones, I'm just going to touch on them lightly. Otherwise, I'd be speaking here for hours. I could talk about this all day. I'm literally a fountain of knowledge when it comes to this topic. And so let's kick it off. Possible reason number 1, excessive artificial light exposure and a lack of complete darkness in the bedroom before you go to sleep. Possible reason number 2, sensory input before you go to bed. And possible reason number 3, you have a monkey mind. I'm going to touch more on this later, but basically you have obsessive thoughts. You can't turn off your brain and you're basically lying there at night and thoughts are running through your mind and you simply cannot fall asleep. Big problem number 2 is you don't feel tired enough to go to bed by 10 p.m. You're simply not tired enough to actually move into bed by 10 p.m., even though you know you should. Possible reasons for this, number 1 is caffeine, number 2 is sugar, and number 3 is winding up activities, anything that keeps you stimulated right before bed. That might be screen time, it might be conversation, something social, anything of that nature. Big problem number 3, you spend about 8 hours in bed, but you still wake up in the morning tired and fatigued. You know, something to remember here is that 8 hours in bed is not necessarily 8 hours of recovery. I broke it down to 3 possible reasons for this. Possible reason number 1 is a poorly timed circadian rhythm. Possible reason number 2 is a lack of REM sleep. And possible reason number 3 is sleep disordered breathing. Let me give you a little backstory as to why I'm making a video about sleep in particular and how to correct sleep. This is one of the most important subjects you could address initially if your goal is to overcome a weight problem, an illness, a disease of any kind, or fatigue in general, as you might guess. And I've had my own particular struggles with sleep in my life. Years ago, I started to listen to all the motivational CDs and videos and audiobooks that I could possibly get my hands on. I really wanted to take my business to the next level, and I wanted to get motivated. And there was a commonality amongst all the speakers. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them supported this idea of not having to sleep or foregoing sleep in order to do more work, in order to find the success that they wanted. And many of them would brag about, getting up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., prior to 6 a.m., some of them surviving on 3 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep, and saying that this was a regular occurrence for them. And it seems to be the theme in our culture today that if you don't get a lot of sleep and you work harder, this is associated with success. And of course, I bought into that. And I tried it for years. For years, I would get up as early as 5, 4, and even 3 a.m. And I think a few times I even did 2 a.m. I was experimenting. What can I say? And the underlying belief here, once again, is that in order to be successful, you must forego sleep to do more work. But is that true? And when you are sleep deprived, is sleep deprivation really what you need to accomplish here, or do you need to accomplish more productive work, higher quality work, more consistent work, more clarity of purpose? So all in all, I discovered that this isn't true, okay? You do not need to sacrifice your sleep in order to be successful. I would even argue that there isn't much of an advantage to sacrificing your sleep. I would say it's actually a disadvantage because it really messes you up in terms of your capacity to learn, in terms of your capacity to get things done, in terms of your ability to handle your emotions, in terms of your ability to remember things. Eventually, it's going to wear away at you. And I was having a thought recently today about these motivational speakers and how they talk about foregoing sleep. And I've always wondered, when they're giving one of these speeches in front of a crowd of, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people, I wonder if the night before, if they got 8 hours plus sleep, right? I'm pretty sure that almost everyone on that stage who's speaking in a live event, they all slept well the night before, and they didn't show up on stage with 3-4 hours of sleep. I think they would agree that would be a little bit crazy. But yet this is something that is promoted in the world of personal development and success. And I'm here to explain to you that that is not true. You want to do the opposite. You want to get plenty of sleep. You want to handle things like your capacity to organize yourself and set goals and be productive. You want to use other tools to accomplish that. But the last thing you sacrifice here is your sleep. Trust me on this one. I basically did my best to live this lifestyle of low sleep entrepreneurship for many years. I would, like I said, get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. First thing I would do is I would sit at my desk and I would start to type away or get some work done or read a book or do some sort of meditation. And I did this for years. And it got to a point where actually I noticed my immune system was not as strong as it used to be. I used to be more emotionally volatile. And at some point years ago, I actually contracted a fungal infection at the gym. I got a fungal infection, a common one, jock itch. I didn't get it in my jock area. I got it all over my body. And it was just a horrible, horrible situation to be in because I literally had these spots that would erupt all over my body when I didn't eat right? Of course, I was eating more sugary foods at the time because how do you miss sleep and avoid sugar, right? Once you're sleep deprived, you have this tendency to eat more carbohydrate-rich foods. So I would eat the carbohydrate-rich foods, my immune system would be depressed, and this fungal infection would basically erupt all over my body, and I would be in bed at night, and it would just make me itch all night, and I wouldn't be able to get a wink of sleep. It was absolute torture. It was horrible. And this led me to get a device. I knew my sleep was a part of the factor here. I knew that one of the biggest issues I was having was the fact that I wouldn't be able to sleep at all at night because of the itching. And so one thing I did was I bought myself an Oura Ring, which is a wearable bio-tracking device. It measures your deep sleep. It measures your REM sleep. It measures your body temperature. It measures pretty much everything you need to know in order to track the quality of your sleep. And I would look at the results after a night of sleep on this thing, and they would just be horrible. I was getting like 10 minutes of REM sleep, less than 30 minutes of deep sleep. And to put it into perspective, you want to get around 2 hours of REM and 2 hours of deep sleep. That's kind of what the standard is in terms of healthy sleep patterns. And I would try to implement all kinds of different strategies to improve my sleep, simple ones at first, of course. And it just wouldn't get better. It was becoming a real problem. My quality of life was going down. And I didn't look good either. I was very inflamed. I had a bit of a belly at the time. I have old pictures of this. It was a real problem. Eventually, I was starting to notice some themes. I was starting to notice some trends. I was starting to figure out what worked and what didn't work, but I still wasn't able to get rid of this fungus infection, and I still wasn't able to perfect my sleeping patterns. And so I went online, I went on Amazon.com, and I purchased about a dozen books on the science of sleep, and I read all of them. I just became obsessed with the topic, and I'm not gonna say I'm a sleep expert here, but I know enough now to actually coach my clients into correcting their sleep. At this point in my life, I take my sleep very seriously. I see the effects. In fact, my sleep has never been better since I've learned what I've learned, and I'm going to share some of this with you today. And it really makes you appreciate how important sleep really is for everything, right? Not just your physical health, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Everything about my life has improved by learning how to adjust and account for my sleep to make it as best as it could possibly be. So what exactly is sleep? I'm not going to get into the science of it, but I do like to use metaphors to teach concepts to people. And I like to tell people that sleep is like an oil change for your brain, right? If you have a car and you're driving a vehicle and you're really running that car hard, right? If you're really pushing the engine, eventually you're going to need an oil change. You're going to need to clean it out so it could run again well the next day. Well, sleep does that for your brain, right? It changes it up. Changes up all the oil. It makes everything run more smoothly the next day. If you skip that oil change, you're running on fumes. Sleep is also the period of time where you consolidate your memories and your emotions from that day, right? A lot of things happen during the day. You get emotional. There might be traumas that happen. You might learn new things. Well, all that emotional information and all that mental information has to be consolidated and put into your long-term memory, and your body has to associate it with your pre-existing knowledge. And if you don't go through a proper phase of sleep, if you don't have your deep sleep cycles and your REM sleep cycles, the next day, these emotions and this information is going to be scattered. It's going to be unorganized. It's going to be hard for you to retrieve. And that's where things like anxiety and depression come in. Believe it or not, people who have anxiety and depression, they do have sleep disorders in common. They all have improper sleeping habits, or they all have sleeping issues. It's one of the commonalities observed in these conditions. And ultimately, sleep is for that. It's for you to consolidate information. This is especially important for learning, but also emotional intelligence, your ability to cope with stress, to react and respond well in relationships, and to otherwise be a pleasant human being. Sleep is also the process whereby which your physical body repairs itself of damage. Throughout a day, any day, your body's wearing out. Cells need to be replaced. Your joints are receiving impact. You're breathing. Your lungs are expanding. All kinds of things are happening, and these parts wear out. They need to be replaced. And a metaphor I like to use for this is fixing a water pump that's still pumping water. If you go to sleep at night, you enter into this state of paralysis. That paralysis is necessary to actually repair the tissues in your body that need to be repaired. And, I bring up the water pump analogy because if you have a water pump and you want to fix it, right, you need to first turn off the water in order to replace the parts on the pump. In the same way, if you have a faulty wire in your home, an electrical wire, and you want to change out the wire, first thing you're going to do is you're going to turn off the power before you change that wire. Otherwise, you're going to electrocute yourself. So sleep serves that purpose as well. Physical repair, fundamental process of sleep. So all in all, sleep repairs us physically, emotionally, and mentally. And the culmination of the three will actually decide how we feel spiritually at the end of the day. How do we feel overall? It's the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual working together. So let's talk about how we could get better sleep. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail. Remember, I talked about environmental factors, environmental interventions. When we talk about the environment, what we're trying to manipulate is light, sound, and air quality, all right? Too much light, not enough light at certain times of day. It's all relative. This has to do with your circadian rhythm. The quality of your air. You don't want to have polluted air. And of course, sounds. You don't want sounds waking you up at night. You don't want to be hyperstimulated right before bed. If you need to wear earplugs, then you should. I actually wear earplugs every night just to ensure that nothing wakes me in the middle of the night. Another area to consider is adopting habits and rituals. And this is important because if you don't have habits and rituals that allow you to perfect your sleep process, you're going to have difficulty getting consistent sleep. And, this is a big deal because for a lot of people, just the subject of changing your sleep or improving your sleep, they don't have the clarity of purpose or the sense of mission required to actually go through that entire process. Ritualizing your sleep and habitualizing the process of getting good sleep and making it a part of your life is very difficult in this day and age. Why? Because we have screens, we have mobile devices, iPads, laptops, we have on-demand stream television, we have video games. There's all sorts of stuff out there calling for our attention after a long workday, calling us to stay awake past our bedtime, unfortunately, and messing up our health in the long term. And these things are addictive. These are addictive technologies. It's a digital addiction. And so developing habits and rituals that allow you to navigate through these potential obstacles become paramount. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail about this because it is a huge subject matter in and of itself. We also have biomechanical interventions, also known as sleep disordered breathing. All right. So, the structure of your jaw, the size of your esophagus, the size of your tongue, your ability to breathe through your nose or through your mouth, that could be disordered. It could be a situation where you're sleeping at night and you think you're falling asleep and you're waking up for other reasons, but the reality is you're being starved of oxygen. This is actually very common. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail. I'll touch on it a little bit more later. But sleep disordered breathing is the second most common, or the most common thing I see in my clients when they have 30 plus pounds to lose or more. And finally, there's biochemical interventions, also known as the magic pills, right? The pills you could take, the supplements you could use to help you address that problem. This usually comes down to deficiency and or toxicity. Deficiency in what? Usually it's vitamin D, the B vitamins, zinc, magnesium. These are common deficiencies that if you address them, it'll improve your sleep. And in terms of toxicity, like I mentioned in my story, if you have a fungal infection, if you have a parasitic infection, any kind of pathogenic infection in your body, anything living in you, this could wake you up at night, as these things tend to be most active in the evening. You could have disturbed sleep or nightmares for that reason as well. So as promised, how to start correcting this, I'm going to be talking about the biochemical interventions, all right? The magic pills, the supplements you could take. And I always start by saying, take the basics. And I call these the core 4 supplements. The 4 supplements that almost everyone is deficient in, they are D3, and I suspect that you've heard of D3 before, vitamin D. I want you to take this in liquid form. Why liquid? Because if you take it in capsules, you're going to have a lot to take. You need to take a lot of vitamin D in order to replace what you're probably missing. I won't go into too many details now. I've heard people giving out, 10,000 to 20,000 international units at once. This is a fat-soluble vitamin, so you want to be consuming fat while you're taking it. I'll do about 20,000 every now and then. It depends on the season, depends how much I travel. There's zinc. Almost everyone is deficient in zinc. I recommend liquid zinc. That way you could actually do something called a zinc tally test. You could taste whether or not you have enough zinc in your system by the awful taste it would create in your mouth, on your palate, if you do have enough in your system. I recommend that in liquid form as well. I recommend omega-3 because it is anti-inflammatory and we don't want inflammation, and because we want healthy fats. Omega-3s are healthy fats. They help your brain as well. So omega-3s are another standard supplement I recommend. And finally, magnesium. I recommend you get a liquid magnesium oil spray that you would put on your body. Avoid the glands, avoid the armpits, avoid the groin area. It's going to burn. And this would absorb much more easily through the skin than it otherwise would through your gut, especially if you have leaky gut syndrome. So the way to dose these supplements, it's very simple. I'm of the belief that if you are going to take supplements, you want to take them for the longest period of time as possible. And if budget is an issue, you're better off just taking the minimal dose every day with your main meal at noon when your digestive power is highest. Take all those supplements, 1 pill of each if it's a capsule. If it's not a capsule and it's powder, 1 scoop at midday. If it's the type of thing that'll make you sleepy, maybe right before bed. And finally, if it's a liquid or a spray, like magnesium oil, you probably want to take that before bed as well. But the idea is to do it for a longer period of time and derive the health benefits over time and consistently than to have spikes in the availability of these substances and then experience a drop-off because it's too expensive. You don't want to be spending $300 to $600 a month on supplements and then get off them. You're better off doing the minimum and experiencing a gradual increase in your health and a consistent increase over time and never really dropping off. Now, for all the supplements I just mentioned, I am going to leave links at the bottom of this video so you could go purchase them for yourself very quickly and you're not going to have to worry about whether you're getting the right thing. These are the actual supplements I endorse and that I use myself personally. There are certain brands I trust, certain brands I don't. I'm going to put the links at the bottom for you so you could check it out yourself. Step 2, there's this amazing supplement that I've been using for years called Senatol or Senatol, depends how you want to pronounce it. It is a mix of magnesium bisglycinate, which is a form of magnesium, of course, inositol, which is a B vitamin, and citric acid. Now, this is a supplement that I discovered by chance. I forget what the scenario was, but I do remember trying to get better sleep and to research some things that I could use. And I suffered at one point in my life from a monkey mind. I was not able to turn my brain off. And I discovered that using inositol is actually a substance that has been well researched and used in helping kids with ADHD symptoms or ADD symptoms kind of settle down and relax a bit. And I'm not saying that I have ADD, but it could feel that way sometimes when you're trying to go to bed at night and you can't turn off your brain. Taking this supplement changed my life. Every time I go to bed a little bit more worried than I should be, a little bit more anxiety than I should have, I would take this supplement and it would just completely mellow me out, and I just wouldn't have those obsessive thoughts that I otherwise would have had I not taken a supplement. And so this is a great tool. I know a lot of people have monkey mind anxiety right before bed, and have trouble going to bed because of it, and will actually watch television and be on the screen to distract themselves as they're in bed. Of course, not optimal, right? So I suggest you use this supplement if this is something in particular that you struggle with. Step 3, you want to boost serotonin production. So serotonin is the happiness neurotransmitter that's created in your gut, moves up into your brain. About 80-90% of it is created in your gut, the rest in your brain. And you actually need serotonin first and foremost to be happy, right? You just need it to be in a good mood. And serotonin, believe it or not, is something that you're required to receive a certain amount of UV light exposure or sun exposure in order to signal your body to start producing this in your gut and in your brain. And so in the winter months, a lot of us get SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and really, this is rooted in the fact that we're not experiencing as much sun exposure. And so the part of your brain, the part of your eyes, there's something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. These mechanisms in your body do not register the signals they would need to produce not melatonin, sorry, the serotonin you need to experience elation or that happiness. But there's something more to this. Now, serotonin is actually the compound that is then turned into melatonin, which helps you sleep. It is broken down into melatonin later in the day. So the amount of serotonin you produce around midday is also your capacity to produce melatonin in the evening, and therefore your capacity to experience sleep pressure and actually get tired. And so what is serotonin made of? It is made up of, or some of the chemical building blocks that you need to manufacture it are tryptophan and tyrosine. All right, and these can be found in meats and proteins, but you could also take a supplement. There's a supplement called 5-HTP, which you could take, which will support this, and I would take it around midday as well, because that would signal your body around the same time that the sun would signal you at its high point in the sky. And of course, you could take tyrosine as well, also a precursor. 5-HTP, tyrosine, one or the other. Powerful, powerful tools for your mood and also your sleep, and I believe they work well the way they do because they affect your sleep first and foremost. And finally, step 4, I want you to relax and decompress. If you're the type of person who's very wired and has a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress in the evening, you could relax and decompress with my SAD protocol, my seasonal affective disorder protocol. I actually have an entire protocol I created. You don't have to get everything on this list, but it has adaptogens in it. Adaptogens or adaptogenic herbs are very useful. They calm the stress response. They bring you into a parasympathetic state, rest and digest. They make you relaxed. There are herbs like cordyceps. Well, cordyceps is a mushroom. Ashwagandha, holly basil. There's all kinds of herbs that you could use to help you relax and get into the state that you need to get into in order to start generating a sleep situation. There's also something really interesting that I came across years ago. It's a product from Metagenics. It's called Nucera, and it's basically a milk protein hydrosolate. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Hydrosolate, say that however you wish. I'm not sure how this really works, but it's a chewable, and when you chew on it, it completely calms you down. You just get this wave of calm all over your body. And I used to do this or use this supplement years ago when I had to do some public speaking, and I would get a little bit of anxiety before I would speak in front of a group of people. And I would take this chewable, and I kid you not, within minutes, I would just feel calm and relaxed, and all my anxiety and concern would go away. And it only lasts for about 15, 20 minutes or so. But it does a really good job, and I'm not sure what the mechanism is, but it's something worth trying out, especially if you have public speaking engagements and you tend to get a little bit flustered or concerned right before you speak in front of a group of people. So those are my 4 easy steps, my 4 biochemical interventions. Of course, there are other interventions. There's habits and rituals. There's biomechanical interventions. There's environmental interventions. It's a massive subject to cover. If you tried all the biochemical interventions and still you have disturbed sleep or still your sleep is not optimal, then you might want to get in touch with me to ask me for a little bit of guidance. It could be quite complex to apply the other methods or to problem solve through the other methods. But you do have to find a solution to your sleep problem if you're having one. It is the most important thing. You won't lose weight if you have a sleep issue. You'll have trouble recovering from illness, any illness, chronic or not, if you have a sleep issue. And ultimately, your capacity to learn, your emotional wellness, all these things will suffer if you're not taking care of your sleep. If you like what you just watched, you could show your support by doing one of the following. Like, comment, or share this content on your social media. You can join my private mailing list for exclusive how-to content. You can listen to my radio show, Transform Yourself Radio. You could follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter, or you could visit my website, transformyourselfuniversity.com. All the links are in the description. See you next time.